Okay, let's be real. You've seen it everywhere, right? That bright green powder popping up in your lattes and desserts, maybe even in face masks. Matcha is a phenomenon. But what's the deal with it really? Is it more than just a pretty color?
And that's the big question we're going to dig into. Is this vibrant green powder actually more powerful than regular old green tea? Or is it all just brilliant marketing? Well, to figure that out, we've got to go back to the beginning.
So let's talk about how this stuff is actually made. The answer to our question really starts there. You see, it begins its life in the exact same place as green tea, but believe me, the journey it takes is wildly different.
Yep, believe it or not, both matcha and regular green tea come from the very same plant, Camellia sinensis. But that's pretty much where the similarities end. From this point forward, their paths could not be more different.
Okay, so here's the first huge plot twist, how they're grown. For about 20 to 30 days before they're picked, the tea bushes that are going to become matcha are covered up, shielded from sunlight. This basically puts the plant into a kind of survival mode, and it starts pumping out way more chlorophyll. That's what gives it that crazy vibrant green color and a ton of amino acids.
And after that whole shade-growing spa treatment, the process gets super meticulous. We're talking only the best leaves get picked. Then they're painstakingly destemmed and deveined. And finally, they're slowly, carefully stone ground into that super fine, silky powder that we call matcha.
And this right here, this is probably the most important difference to understand. It's like the quote says, drinking green tea is like boiling a carrot and just drinking the water. But with matcha, you're eating the whole carrot. You're consuming the entire leaf, powder and all.
So what's the big deal about eating the whole leaf? Well, for your health, it means everything. You're getting a super concentrated dose of all the good stuff the plant has to offer. And that, right there, is why matcha has this reputation as a total health-boosting powerhouse. Let's just look at the numbers for a second. In a typical cup of matcha, you're looking at around 70 milligrams of caffeine. That's about double what you get in regular green tea. And remember, because you're drinking the whole leaf, you're getting this massive, concentrated blast of nutrients, not just what seeps out into the water.
But hey, the caffeine is just one piece of the puzzle. The real showstopper is this number, 10 times. Matcha can have 10 times more of something incredibly important. Any guesses what that might be?
Antioxidants. We're talking about those little bodyguards that fight off cell damage. And because you're consuming the whole shebang, the entire leaf, some studies show that matcha can pack up to 10 times the antioxidants of a regular cup of green tea. That's a huge difference.
So what does this antioxidant overload mean for you? Well, it translates to some pretty serious potential perks. We're talking about links to a lower risk of heart disease, a little boost to your metabolism, and even better brain function. But the one people always talk about, the one that's almost famous, is this feeling of calm alertness.
I know, calm alertness sounds like a total oxymoron, right? How can you be calm and alert? Well, the secret ingredient is an amino acid called L-theanine. And remember that whole shade growing thing we talked about? That process jacks up the L-theanine levels in the leaves.
And this is exactly why the buzz you get from matcha is so different from, say, a cup of coffee. Coffee is basically just a caffeine bomb. It gives you that spike and then the crash. Matcha, on the other hand, gives you caffeine teamed up with L-theanine. The L-theanine actually promotes these calming alpha waves in your brain, which takes the edge off the caffeine. So instead of jitters, you get this smooth, focused, sustained energy. No crash. It's a total game changer.
Okay, so at this point, matcha is sounding like a miracle powder, right? We've got concentrated nutrients, calm energy, a mountain of antioxidants. But hold on, before you go out and buy a lifetime supply, there are a couple of things you really need to know. There's always a catch, isn't there? Well, it turns out that matcha's biggest superpower, the fact that you consume the entire leaf, is also its potential kryptonite. Here's the thing. Plants are like sponges. They suck up stuff from the soil they grow in. So the tea leaves can end up with trace amounts of things like heavy metals or fluoride. And of course, if pesticides were used, they can be on the leaves too. Now with regular tea, you steep it and toss the leaf, so most of that stuff gets thrown out. With matcha, it's all ground up and goes straight into your drink. Going organic is a good move for pesticides, but it won't change what's naturally in the soil.
So, the key takeaway here is pretty simple. Moderation is everything. And that brings us to our final, and maybe most important, number to remember. 2.
What's the 2 for? Well, because matcha is so concentrated,
And because that potential for contaminants we just talked about, most experts recommend that you stick to a max of about 2 cups a day. That way you get all the good stuff without overdoing it on the potential risks. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. We've seen how it's made, we've talked about those incredible benefits, and we've looked at the potential downsides. So let's wrap this all up. What's the final verdict? Let's go back to that very first question we asked. Is matcha a more powerful form of green tea? And the answer is, yeah, a resounding yes. It is absolutely more potent. It really comes down to this. By drinking the entire, specially grown leaf, you're getting a much bigger dose of all the good stuff. More caffeine, way more antioxidants, and more of that amazing L-theanine for focus. The flip side, the trade-off, is that you also get a slightly higher risk of exposure to those contaminants from the soil. So, that leaves us with one last question, and this one's for you. Now that you know it's way more powerful, but also that you need to be a little more mindful about where it comes from and how much you drink, is it time for you to trade in your tea bag for a whisk? What do you think?